Family, what's up? What's up? Welcome to the Virtual Church Online Development Course, Class, Conference, whatever you want to call it. Welcome. We are so glad to have you guys here. This family is such an unprecedented time. We are just glad to be able to offer an opportunity to share our knowledge, what the Lord has taught us, what hard lessons have taught us through trial and error and whatever we have to offer. This week is just going to be an incredible week. We have some of our amazing teachers from our church that are on staff. Well, first, wait, I'm going too fast. Let me introduce myself. I'm Chandler. I'm the creative lead here at All Nations ATL. And I oversee production and a lot of other creative stuff that we have going on. So today, I'm just really excited that we have the opportunity to pour into you guys and to pour in knowledge, wisdom, impart whatever lessons we've learned. And we have a lot of lessons. We're only 3 years old, but a lot has happened here at All Nations Atlanta in our 3 years. So we're going to not wait. We're going to jump right in to our first session with none other than our pastor, LaBryant friend. He is going to be talking on trusting your team. My pastor, LaBryant, is just an amazing asset in the kingdom. His knowledge, his wisdom, his practicality, and what he imparts into anybody who's wise enough to sit and just listen is just out of this world. So we're going to bring him on. I hope you guys got your notebooks, your pens, your pads ready. And this is going to be an amazing time. Let's bring him on. Pastor.
What's going on? Man, I'm excited.
Good morning. So we're going to hand this over to him. Make sure you guys are taking notes. This is just going to be an amazing time. All right, Pastor, the floor is yours.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, however that applies to you. I hope it is a good one for you. And I'm very excited to be here tonight to share with you all in day one or evening one of what we're calling the virtual church experience. Listen, guys, this is an opportunity for All Nations Atlanta to be able to share with men and women some of the things that God has and is doing in the midst of our church. And our prayer is that some of the tools that he's blessed us with over these last couple of years will serve as instruments of help to you, especially while navigating what is our new normal, this new reality that we're currently sitting in with global pandemic and shelter in place. Every one of us were forced to do something pretty fast as it pertains to how we do church, how we touch our people, how we touch our kids, how we do our music, how we do our media. Everything changed almost overnight. So what I'm going to do today, I'm going to open up the door to what I hope is going to be a valuable discussion over this entire week over what are the intricate parts of ministry for us and how God has allowed us in a time of crisis to still experience significant growth, significant increase, and to be able to still touch lives around the world, even to a greater capacity than what we already have. So I've got a slideshow presentation I'm going to share with you tonight. It's got just some bullet points and some notes that I'm going to just kind of share on what my experience has been. And I'm going to talk through some of them, but most of them I'm going to elaborate on. I'm going to go for maybe about half an hour. Then I'm going to open up for you all to ask me anything you want to ask me, okay? So tonight, my subject is called Trust Your Team. And the reason why I'm starting here, and this is primarily geared towards senior pastors, senior leaders, or men and women that are leading out teams or leading team ministries. My first focus is really on senior pastors and leaders, but then we're going to break it down to hopefully be able to make points applicable to every aspect and every facet of leadership as a whole. And I'm calling it Trust Your Team because right now we're navigating a new normal. We've never seen anything like this. Our prayer is that in our lifetime, we'll never have to see anything like this again. But what has happened is we have now been forced to do things differently than we've ever had to do them before. Many of us may have already had like a Facebook stream or a social media stream by which we displayed our Sunday morning services. And that was cool because we could do it on Sunday morning, no other work, no other maintenance. What this pandemic has forced us to do is to become creative on how we've had to do everything virtually. So that's from team meetings, from worship rehearsals and practices, to stuff as simple as staff meetings, how we Zoom all that in, how we touch our kids and our teens, how we keep everybody connected. Everything has changed. And what I want you all to understand is that this is normal. What we thought was normal before now, this is our new normal. All right, so this is our new normal. I don't want you to think it's ever going to go back to what it was. Even when we come out of our shelter in places around the globe, there's still going to be a new sense of something being different. We're just calling a new normal. So with that, we have to prepare ourselves for what's to come and how we build teams to help us facilitate the future. If you mess around and make the mistake of going back to doing what you did before you got here, we've wasted a moment that God has granted us to be more creative, more innovative, and to tap into keys that we did not have before to better facilitate our future. All right. Now, for many of you, if you are a church planner, I know there's probably several church planners in here, or if you inherited a church team, regardless of if it's a team you built or a team that you had to inherit, the stretch right now is trying to be sure that people that you have given position are properly using the voice that you have given them platform for. And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more in a minute. But everybody that has a position that is under your authority has a piece, or should have a piece of your heart, and they should be able to carry pieces of your voice, which becomes amplified in the ears of those who are submitted to them. All right. Here's what I want you to grab. Now, if you don't grab anything else I say tonight, I want to be sure you grab this. God has already staffed your team and church with everything you need to manage this current moment. Now, I want you to take a deep breath on that. Breathe in, breathe out. I want you to take this one in. God has already staffed your church with everything you need to manage this moment. All right. This is an unprecedented moment, but I'm crazy enough to believe that God has already properly staffed your house with everything that you need to become and to weather this storm and to become better in the middle of it. What I also believe is that if you keep your ears open, you're going to find some hidden gems on your team. You're going to find some men and women that you did not even know were present, that are going to rise to the surface and that are going to show that they have strengths in this season that are going to make everything you do even better than where it is right now. Okay. So you have everything that your house needs. Everything that you need is already there. It's available. It's open, and you're going to do it and do it well. Now, there was a time when leaders were afraid to give too many people power and or position out of fear that individuals in power would steal individuals and ideas and start their own little thing. I can't give people too much power because if I give them too much power, they may create a little church of their own and then run off with my people and do their own thing. What I want to break off of you tonight is the fear of someone taking something that God created for you and not making it a team effort because you're afraid that if you give too much power away, that people are going to run off and start something on their own outside of you. I want you to have the bold confidence that everything God has for you is for you, and no one can steal and or take away what he's created and destined for you to build. You're going to build it. You're going to build it well, and you're going to do it without any fear or shame. All right. So I'm going to give you 3 components of trusting your team And I'm going to give you some practical pieces of how they've affected us, how they have made us better, and how they have opened up my heart to see new avenues of what God is trying to do in the life of All Nations Atlanta, that I think as leaders, you will be able to take it with you as well. Point number one is this: trust their voices. Trust their voices. Just put it in the comments. Trust their voices. And it's very important that when you have people that God has trusted you with, and men and women that you have surrounded yourself with from a leadership perspective, that you trust the voices of the men and women who are called to lead with you. All right. John Maxwell would say it like this: most good leaders want the perspective of people they trust. So what you learn is, anytime you're taking leadership journeys, God will call men and women alongside of you to aid and or to help what he's created you to do. Rarely does God call you to do something singularly. Even if he gives you the vision, he's going to send you voices to help build out and or create what he's called you to be. The value of having the right voices is that they give you a perspective that is outside of you, and they help you to see out of a lens that may have been broken, or one that you may not have even noticed without their presence. For me, strong leaders are my blind spots. It's kind of like when you're driving in a car and you look out your rear view mirror or your side view mirror. And one thing that most vehicles, and I think it's on the right side, it might be the left, it would always have this little writing on it: objects in the mirror are closer than they appear. The reason why you need the right voices and the right perspectives is because they help you to see when things are closer than they appear and what things could be detrimental if you don't manage it correctly. It is poor leadership to surround yourself with people that'll just say yes to whatever you want, and they will not offer their perspective that'll help possibly balance out your vision. Now, the beauty of what has worked for us here in Atlanta is this: I know my personality type, I know my leadership style, I know my wiring. Okay, I know all of those pieces as it pertains to me. I know that I can be flexible when I want to, but I know I can also be a very strong and domineering leader when I want to as well. I've learned how to curb some of my edge so that the people that are in my proximity won't be afraid to talk when necessary. They will be able to share and to state what is conducive for a moment that I might not see. Now, here is why you need to trust the voices. If God has sent you men and women that are skilled in areas where you don't have current capacity or capability, what they do is they sharpen your weaknesses. Now, I know very often we like to keep people around us who are like us. They think like us, they move like us, they act like us, they respond like us. But real leadership is being able to put people at the table that do not see it the way that you see it, don't have your perspective and or your history, but they have the ability to aid their voice to what you're building so that you can see it from a different lens. Here's what I want you to know. You are the leader, but what gives flavor to your leadership are the voices that help to push your vision. Hear me. If this is team leadership, if this is overall church leadership, even if this is entrepreneurial leadership, you are the lead, you are the visionary. But what gives flavor to it, what gives it strength, power, flavor, is how you enhance it with different perspectives. If you are the only voice speaking into the vision, it's a vision that won't last long. But when you trust other voices to give revelation, to give understanding, and to give their proper perspectives for what you've trusted them with, you'll see what you're called to do go even further. What I want to be an arrow in your quiver is this. If you have put people in leadership responsibilities and you have tasked them to complete assignments and or to carry a part of your heart, what you got to believe is their voice adds value to your vision. All right. Their voice adds value to your vision. So like even on my staff, on my team, I don't have a ton of LaBryant friends. Now, I've got people that have pieces of me, but I don't have all of me in every component of every team. I've got men and women that think differently than me. I've got a married individual. I've got single individuals. I've got single women. I've got single men. I've got those that are dating. I've got those who have completed master's degrees. I got those who have graduated from the school of life. And all of them bring a different voice and a different skill set and a different gift setting to what it is we do. What gives us the ability to go further is my openness to their perspectives and giving them the ability to lead as it pertains to their call. If you are bringing a voice to the table that you are going to micromanage, then you don't need that voice. Do it yourself. But if you bring them to the table and you allow them to exercise the voice that God gave them and the openness to be able to say it to you, you'll watch something beautiful form out of your vision. Guys, I'll be honest, with even with our staff and with our leaders, even when we do staff meeting, this is not a moment for me to put all that they say under a microscope and tell them what they're doing wrong. This is a moment for me to see how they're lending their strength and their voice to the vision that they're working up under, and to trust them to do it and to do it well. What you're going to see over the course of this entire week are men and women who simply believe in the vision God has given me, and they run well in the context of that vision. All right, they run well with it. You're going to hear it all week. Now, I'm going to go over my time. I guess I can't do it because I started, but guys, please don't pray the rest of my team doesn't follow my template. Hear me when I say this part. Your vision plus their voices equals our victory. Your vision plus their voices equals our victory. Okay. And here's what I mean when I say that. God made you senior leader, ministry leader. You've got something that you oversee and you cast vision for. You are the visionary. All right. When you add the right voices to the vision, it becomes a corporate victory. And this is what I mean. When vision is cast right and people believe in the why, they'll have buy-in to do it and to do it well. What I've learned is, especially in this pandemic, is that most leaders haven't had the full buy-in of those who have been on their team. And now they feel like they're scrambling because those who they thought were with them are not bought into the degree that they first thought. When you have men and women who support what it is you're created for and who you've trusted their voice with, you'll discover that your vision plus their voice equals corporate victory. All right. It's our victory. Whenever we win, like right now, I feel like All Nations Atlanta is winning pretty strong. It is never LaBryant Friends victory. It is a team victory. It is something that we won together. It is never about their voice pushing me as an individual. It's about what are we doing collectively with our voices to expand the kingdom and to make it even more potent in what it is we're called to create within that context. So the short of it is, don't micromanage the voices. If you have given them your authority, let them run with that authority and allow their voice to bring a different flavor to your table to make it even better. Okay. So that's point number one. It's a very easy one. You got to trust their voices. You have to trust their voices. All right. Number two, for some leaders, this is going to be a hard one, but I want you to breathe when I say it, because if you heed this warning, and if you heed this opportunity in the middle of a pandemic, you'll watch parts of your church and parts of your organization explode in a way that'll blow your mind. Number two, you have to trust their influence. You have to trust their influence. I want you to say it with me. Trust their influence. If you, as a leader, are bringing people to the table It means you see something influential that's on the inside of them. Now, a lot of what I'm going to say tonight, you're not going to watch me pull a lot of biblical application. A lot of this is going to be just very practical application. I'll throw a scripture in there once or twice, just so you all know I'm still pulling these pieces from the book. All right. But you have to trust their influence. In the context of All Nations Atlanta, I want you to hear me when I say this. Everybody knows that I am the lead pastor. So I am the one that stands on a stage week in, week out. I'm the one who is a primary decision maker, etc. All right. So from a grand stage, people would say I am the most influential voice in the house. The truth is, there are men and women on our leadership team that I feel like have more influence with people than I do. Meaning they have strong leadership gifting, capability, and they have lived in the lives of people that I'll never be able to touch. All right. So here's the short of it. I pastor my teams. I trust my teams to help me pastor the church. So I do my best to live in the life of the individuals that are closest to me. I want to know their struggles. I want to know their triggers. I want to know where things are off. I want to know all of it. I want you to give me the whole gamut. I want to know when stuff is off with you. I want to know when you ain't feeling it right now. I want you to give it all to me, because what I'm doing is I am owning the fact that as a leader, you trust me. But as a leader, I see you as a voice of influence and or reason in what it is we're called to do. So I, in turn, take your stuff. I help you process through it, but then I trust you to lead the people who God has called you to lead alongside of that. Now, why is it important? There are men and women who my leaders are more in their lives than I am, and they have more buy-in with my leaders than they do me. But because my leaders have my heart, the last thing I'm worried about is one of them trying to run off and start their own thing, because in the process of giving them the ability to lead other people, I also try to lead them well. I hope that makes sense. All right. So you don't want to be the type of leader, the type of senior leader who only has people that'll say yes to you around you. You want to build to the degree that influential people want to be a part of what you're doing. Strong leaders want to be a part of what you're doing, and they trust you with their influence and to lead them in the right direction. In turn, you trust their influence as it pertains to the people. So, because here it is, Seth Godin says it best to me. Leadership is the art of giving people a platform for spreading ideas that work. All right. So really in leading what you're doing, and once you give people buy-in or a piece in your vision, what you're essentially doing is giving them a platform. And you're trusting them with what you've built to influence people in the right way to move forward in everything that God has called them to be and what he's calling the vision to be. Now, why is it important in the time of a pandemic? In the time of a pandemic and a crisis, your influence as senior leaders feels like it wanes or dissipates all the more, because you don't have the ability to touch your people week in and week out like you did at one time. What you now have to trust are the men and women you've put in place to do what you have assigned them to do and to do it well. Okay. Anyone you brought to your team has to be able to add a level of intellect and influence to the vision. So if they're an influencer, that means they bring intellect and they bring influence. They bring them both. Your vision, what God has called you to build, has to give them space to execute their influence and their intellect in the context of what you're doing. Now, what I've learned is there are very often times that leaders who are not as strong get intimidated when strong people show up. So what they do is they find a way to castrate the ability of said influencer being able to reproduce themselves in the life of the church. My greatest commission in the life of All Nations Atlanta is for every leader to multiply themselves. Y'all may need to write this in the comments. You may need to take notes on this. If you've got individuals who are strong leaders, your mandate for them has to be to multiply. All right. If you've got people at the table that you trust, your mandate on them has to be multiply yourself. Make more of you than what we currently see. Multiply yourself. That is giving men and women the ability to execute their influence in the lives of others. Now, if I were to just pull a biblical reference, Moses was about to kill himself leading. Moses was on the brink of literally driving himself crazy as a leader until his father-in-law Jethro came to him and said, listen, you're going to die if you keep doing this like this. The way you need to manage this moment is bring in elders, men who have influence in the hearts of the people, set them over companies of 10, 50, 100, and 1,000, and let them manage the people, and they'll bring you the major issues. It's the principle of multiplication. Man, I'm trying to be like as practical as I can, but I feel prophecy on this. It is a space where you allow men and women to take up who you are and to begin to impart that into other leaders. It is a space where you begin to share your heart, your mind, your intellect, your wisdom into the hearts of men and women who are trustworthy to carry it. And you believe that as they use their influence in the lives of others, they are not going to pimp out what God has called you to produce. All right. But you have to be willing to multiply. Man, even when, Lord, I'm trying not to preach to y'all. I want to like just teach you this. Even when Moses became weary leading the children of Israel, he went on the mountain. God called 70 elders. And in one moment, he put his spirit in 70 elders so that they would understand how to lead like Moses. It is the power of influence. It is taking who you are and putting it in others so that they can carry out the plans and the purposes of the vision that God created you for. The way you're going to be successful is allowing men and women to become who God called them to be. You oversee it and steward it, and you manage that influence well. All right. You manage that influence well. All right. So you right now, hear me. Here's a practical thing you need to do. If you know you've got 3 strong leaders that are in your proximity, 3 strong leaders, an executive pastor, a leader of children's ministry, and an administrator. Those are your 3 strongest leaders that are in your proximity. And here's what you do. Tell them, and this is for some it's going to sound intimidating, but it's going to expand the lifeblood of what you do. Tell them now to start looking for their replacement. All right. Tell them now. It's going to sound real intimidating, but tell them to look for their replacement. Tell them to begin to search out a man or a woman who has the ability to operate similar to them, that's teachable, and that wants to develop in their gift and their call, and allow them to use their influence to help cultivate new levels of leaders and leadership. It's the brilliance for me of real church management and church leadership. I don't have to put my hand on everybody as long as I put my hands on the right ones well. Right? As long as I know what's going on in the intricate spaces of those that are in my closest proximity, I don't have to have my fingers in every single thing. I can trust them to do what they do well. So what you're going to find over the course of these next few nights is it's really just a principle of reproduction. I have one young lady who leads Next Gen Ministries for us. Zoe herself has identified every leader right now that's leading within the context of our Next Generation Ministry. I have not put my hand on anyone. I have not told her she has to put A, B, C, D in place. She understands and knows the vision and the culture of the house. And she has moved seamlessly within the context of that because I trust her influence, but I also know her leadership capacities and capabilities. She does not need me to micromanage children's ministry for it to go well. My pastor or pastoral care is on here tonight, Broderick McBride. Broderick does everything as it pertains to pastoral care, counseling, our tribes, which are our version of small groups. I don't go to Broderick and tell Broderick, hey, I need you to ensure that I need to look at every tribe one by one every day of the week. The truth is, I trust Broderick's intellect, and I trust his influence, and I trust his ability to cultivate men and women to become what they are called to be. I cast vision every 6 months for his area of ministry, and he runs with it. It works well because he is a leader with influence. What I'm saying to you, men and women of God, is find the individuals who carry the influence that's necessary to get your vision to the next. And don't pump the brakes when we come out of a pandemic. Let them start leading now in the middle of a crisis, and you'll learn who really has the capacity to manage when it's good. Anybody that can lead in a crisis can lead in normalcy. I trust and thank God for men and women that know how to lead in the middle of a crisis. All right. Last thing, and I'm done for the night. Trust their creativity. Trust their creativity. Guys, the reason why I feel like All Nations Atlanta, in the middle of what some are experiencing as a decline, we are experiencing what I would call on every front a pretty sharp incline. It's because I trust the creativity of the men and women that God has called to our house. He has stocked, as far as I'm concerned, he has stocked our house with men and women of creativity and ingenuity. And because of that, it gives us the ability to be able to say in the middle of a crisis, what are we going to do differently than how we've always done it? And how are we going to make this stick on the other side of it? All right. Margaret Wheatley would say it like this: the things we fear most in organization, fluctuations, disturbances, and imbalances, are the primary sources of creativity. And guys, you all will know this better than anyone else. Churches hate fluctuations. Churches hate disturbances. Churches hate imbalances. Anytime those things happen, it sends into a tailspin everything that we feel like we're called and created to do. The beauty is this: out of chaos is where we find some of the most beautiful things that God will call and create us to do. It is in the middle of a disturbance that God begins to trust us in ways and in areas that we have not used before to execute what it is he's created us to do. Now, very practical point, very practical point. Since we have been in a time of quarantine, shelter in place, the whole 9 yards, our church has had to become more creative than we've ever been. What I've learned is these moments have caused us to enter into spaces of thinking bigger and thinking in ways to navigate challenges in ways we never had before. So now, in one season where we were used to just doing church, we had all of the whole thing. We had it mapped out, lined up. We knew how to do it and do it well. Now we have been forced into a corner where we can have to say, how can we be more creative than we were before? The beauty for me in this is this. I could sit and come up with creative concepts, but it would take a whole lot of my strength and energy. I could do it. It's not my natural leaning, but I could do it. Now, what we do have are men and women who know how to think fast, think on the fly, and are naturally wired to think creatively. The reason why that's been a blessing is this: The only thing they come looking to me for is, hey, what are you preaching this week? And is there a way you want to illustrate it? Everything else that gets built out of that, it is built because there are people at the table that naturally think in a creative way. So when I'm trying to figure out what a sermon series is actually going to look like in its fruition, I'll call a Chandler or a Justin to the table, and I'll get them to help me piece together what is the best way we can make this happen. I try my best to lean into the places where I'm weaker, where God has surrounded me with strength, so that it'll all make sense at the end of it. Okay. I'm saying this to every leader on here. Don't think that you've got to go into a private bubble and figure it out on your own. Let God add the voices that'll give your vision more flavor and will make it look a little bit more exciting than if you would have just done it yourself. So from our Easter production all the way down to our set building, all the way down to the pieces that we incorporate week in and week out. And you're going to hear all of them talk about it this week. I'm just setting the groundwork. It has all happened not because I saw it, but because I had a team of people that have my heart and knew pieces that I would want to incorporate, and they ran after it. It's all about trusting your team. And this really, it works in every aspect of team leadership, from the senior pastor to directors or team leads to whatever your context is, deacons, elders. When you trust men and women to do what they're called to do, you'll find that there is more wealth in their heads than you may have given it credit for. All right. I believe for you, for your church, for your ministry, for your team, there's going to be a rising turning of creatives, creative ideas, ingenuity, and genius that's going to be added to your house. In the middle of a pandemic, God is going to add ingenuity. And I want you all to receive this. And some of you are like, I don't know how God could even do it. I don't feel like I've got the pieces. I want you to hear me. If God has called you to shepherd, oversee, or lead a thing, the crisis never caught him off guard. He's already stocked you with what you need to manage this moment and to enhance it. So I'm praying for the rise of creative ideas, creative ingenuity, that he would show you where the pieces are so that you can add them to the whole puzzle and make the whole thing make sense. You don't have to be the one-stop shop. God can give you the right voices and influence to make it all make sense. Okay. Now, here's how you're going to do this. When leaders bring new ideas, do not close your heart to them prematurely. Give them the space, please hear me, to color outside of the lines and construct things that'll revolutionize your ministry. Give your leaders permission to color outside of the lines. I know what the constructs are, and for many of us, we're part of organizations that are very strict and stoic. If God has sent you capable men and women, let them color. Let them color, pick whatever color they want to color with, color outside of the lines. Do something that's never been done before. Get a little edgy in the presentation. Go beyond what you all have always done as a normal thing and see what's actually birthed out of that. Your church has its own individual identity. It has a creative evolution that you haven't seen yet. Let fresh insight help you create fresh context for your future. Guys, you are about to walk into something that I believe is going to be beyond a new normal. It's going to be something that opens men and women to see God in an expression that they would have never seen had God not forced us all into a quarantine. What I've told our team, and we're not even doing this as well as a lot of churches around the world. However, what I've told our team and what I promise God is this: once we do open our church doors again, and once we are all back in place, you've given us influence with the world that's beyond what we have ever been able to touch up to this moment. Give us the ability to manage that influence well, and give us the grace to allow your name to still be shared and spread in a way that's going to blow our minds just because we were willing to do it in a pandemic. Trust your team. Trust their creativity. Guys, I want y'all to hear me. If you're a senior pastor, a senior leader on this call, let your leaders fail. Don't come to the rescue every time that I'm not supposed to be going this far. Don't come to the rescue every time you feel like something's going to happen that's outside of your control. Let them have failures. Let stuff not go right. Let everything fall to the floor and let them figure out, with your assistance, if called upon, how to pick the pieces up and put them back together again. Let them invite failure. I'm not saying that you want to fail in culture, but the way that you win is through exercising chance and risk and something not working the way that you thought it would. Let them fail. Let it not work out the way that you thought it would, and watch it be okay. Okay? If you know that these men and women that God has sent you belong with you, let them fail. Let them color outside the lines and let it not work out. And watch what happens on the other end of it. All right, watch what happens on the other end of it. I believe the only reason we have had the level of success that we have is, guys, honestly, I trust my team. I'm going to try not to get teary-eyed, and I'm about to take questions. I trust my team. Like, I trust them. I trust them to carry and embody the vision of All Nations Worship Assembly Atlanta well, and they do it well. They do it well. Now, do we have moments where we have to move people and spaces? Yeah, of course. There are always moments where things don't work out the way that we thought they would, and people or personalities don't work in certain spaces. It's a part of leadership. I would talk to you about leadership pains and leadership pressures and navigating leadership change. These are whole other pieces that we can discuss at a later time. But the truth is, I trust my team. Every person that God has brought to the table for our house, I trust them to be and to become everything, help us to be and become everything God created us to do. God gave me the vision, but Lord, He gave them the buy-in. And because they have buy-in, you're going to see over the course of this week what it looks like when you have men and women that just believe in what God has called you to be, what God's called you to do. And I think that this is like my cherry on top. There is nobody that you're going to see over these next couple of days that is perfect. There is nobody. Everyone, from me all the way down, I got a team full of flaws. We have weaknesses. We have deficiencies. We have areas personally where we're not as sharp or developed as we want to be. But in having all of that, I wouldn't want to lead with another group of people or trust another group of people with what God created us to do. It's simple. So tonight, you are going to hear from our director of HR, Yolanda Johnson, and for our senior pastors and leaders, she's going to be giving you what I think are some key elements of the CARE Act, pieces to the stimulus that you need to be acting on. If you haven't yet, you need to be acting on immediately. And the rest of this week, guys, is loaded. It's loaded. Everything from marketing to production to children, to pastoring people in the middle of a crisis, to leading people in the middle of a crisis, to how to keep worship real and present in the midst of doing it virtually. Guys, this whole week is loaded. It is, when I say loaded, it is loaded. So if you have members of your team that need to get a part of this, or you need to sign up and register, it's not too late. You can still add them in, add them on. But tonight, my word for you is trust your team. Father, I thank you for every man and woman that's on this live. And I thank you for giving them the ability to trust other people with what you've called them to carry. For every senior leader that's tried to bear the load alone, I declare, lighten the load on their shoulders. Your word is very clear. Your yoke is easy and your burden is light. Father, make their load a little bit lighter. I declare they're not going to be stressed out. They are not going to have anxiety. They are not going to go into depression over what they cannot control. You're going to give them the grace to trust the men and women that you've surrounded them with to carry the vision well. I declare for vision birthers, for men and women that are going to help make the vision come to fruition, that they surround these leaders now and that their eyes be open to see every asset God has called to their lives in Jesus' name. Woo. All right, guys, I gave y'all about 45 minutes. If you've got questions, I want you to shoot them to me now. I don't know, Chan's coming back in. He's going to help us facilitate this. Okay.
What up, guys? So, such a powerful, crazy, quick session on trusting your team. I pray that and hope that you guys got so much from that, like a lot of us did. So, get your questions ready. I want you to drop your questions in the comments so that we can do questions for a little bit and read our questions and try to get your questions answered for the next about 15, 20 minutes, hopefully. Man, I think I may have the first question. Okay, as we wait for the questions to roll in.
Okay.
As a senior leader, trusting your team, how do you recover as a senior leader from many failures? Like your team told you they were going to do something, and it just dropped the ball, and then you put your trust in, and maybe again, it seemed like the ball just keep getting dropped. How do your trust kind of get restored back to that place to trust?
Okay, so if we are talking about, consecutive L's, L after L after L, and we have had conversation and/or discussions about these L's and what's happening or what's causing things to not go the way that they need to. This is the moment where I think that leadership confrontation, where we have the challenging conversation, or if, for instance, I've got a man or woman that's a director and one of their subordinates is having issues following through, where we have the hard conversation about navigating what change looks like. Now, change doesn't mean I love you any less because you're not in your spot. Change just means I need to find the space that you best fit in the vision, so you don't become frustrated with what you're doing. And so I don't become frustrated with what you're producing. So it's that change element. It's not being afraid to, it's kind of like what I was talking about in, I think the last one, the fluctuations and the disturbances. Being bold enough to make the change in an uncomfortable time, and a time where it may challenge other people, but even in making the change, letting people know, I still love you. This just ain't working the way that we thought it would.
Yeah. All right, we have a couple questions.
All right, let's go.
First question from Tyler Wooten. That's my homie. What up, man?
What up, Tyler?
Senior pastor, what are 2 key things you expect from your number 2 in this season?
Okay, so like in our context, I would say I've got a number of number 2s. Like I don't think I just have one number 2. I've got at least 2, if not 3 individuals that I would call number 2s right now. So in this current climate, this current culture, one of them happens to be Broderick McBride, who is over all things pastoral care. So part of what he has to do to ensure that things are still running the way that they need to run, our tribes or our small groups are right up under him. So we had to completely revamp everything we do with tribes, make everything turn virtual since we can't do person-to-person interface right now, and push people to still have just as interactive of a session over the computer as they did when they were loving on each other face to face. Now, where that gets tricky, or why that becomes such a pressing issue is here. If we lose the connectivity with our people, then we essentially have lost our church. The only way we can have success is by keeping connectivity in times of crisis. The burden on my number 2s right now is to be sure leadership keeps connectivity and that our church as a whole remains connected in the middle of the crisis. So now their primary responsibility or my primary thoughts for them is make sure nobody falls between the gaps. Like, make sure if somebody has lost their job, we're aware of it. Make sure that if someone is sleeping in their car right now, we're aware of it and we're helping them navigate those challenges. So that's their pressure. That's their new pressure to me.
Okay, another question. Okay. When do you know it's time to transition someone from your leadership team?
Okay. If you are a senior leader, you know your frustration points. Okay. You know where and how you've been triggered by moments of frustration. All right. You also know when those who are on your team are feeling and or sensing those same type of frustrations. 9 times out of 10, a couple of things can be transpiring. One, they're just burned out. Okay, it's very possible for people to love you and love the vision and just be burned out. And you need to give them the space to take a couple steps away and breathe, recalibrate, and then bring them back to the table in a different way. In another sense, there is a space where a confronting conversation just needs to transpire. And what I've learned is very often, especially in the church, we hate the conversations that have confrontation to them. We avoid them like a plague, because what it means is I've got to address somebody that 9 times out of 10, they are volunteering for. So I'm about to fire a volunteer. But when people are stressed, they're never going to produce their best. When people are frustrated, they're never going to produce their best. So don't be afraid to have the challenging conversation if it's necessary to bring something more beautiful out of it.
So good. I'm a pastor from, this is Rohan Samuels. I hope I'm saying it right. I'm a pastor from Edmonton, Alberta.
Okay.
Where that is. How do you develop your leadership team? Great question.
It's a great question. We were just, a matter of fact, we were just talking about this today during our staff meeting, because one of the pieces that I think from our development perspective that has been an aid to me is that since we started, when we initially started, I did a ton of the developing. Now we've been able to identify leaders. And again, it's multiplying your influence. And my leaders have done a lot of the development of leaders. So there's a couple ways, there's a couple things that you can do. Number one, don't be afraid to bring in an outsider. Or so when I say an outsider, and this is a perfect time to do it right now, because people cannot travel. This is a perfect time to find a relationship, call someone that maybe you have been following from a distance, maybe not a big name. We're not talking about a TD Jakes, but someone whose ministry you've watched from a distance, and say, hey, can you give my team 45 minutes or an hour of teaching or development on a Thursday night or a Tuesday night, just so that I can help sharpen who they are and what they're doing. Very often we get intimidated about bringing in voices that don't sound like us, but our greatest win in the kingdom of God is supplementing what we do with things that we don't have, or things that may not be our taste, but are necessary to make the body better. Right now, we are working through over the course of the next 3 weeks how we're training our teams virtually. So like next week, I'm going in to train all of our leaders. The following week, we're bringing somebody in from the outside. I think the week after that, I'm using one of our director of HR and part of our teaching team. They're developing our teams. So keeping opportunities right in their face, but also not being afraid to use other resources. So like real quick, like with our children, we use a product, and I'm sure Zoe's going to talk about this Wednesday night, called Orange. Orange not only lays everything out, but it gives great developmental opportunities within the context of what they built for those leaders. So not being afraid, or not thinking you have to build it all yourself, but being open to watching it happen in other ways as well.
That was packed. That was packed. Let's try to sneak 2 more in there.
Cool.
All right. Num. This is a quick one. How often do you and your leadership team meet?
Okay, so we do staff meetings. I think, Lord, we do staff meetings every week. All right, so that's a
We
every
talk
week type scenario.
for
But yeah, but as far as like talking, I for the most part, everybody on my team, my finger is somewhere on their pulse several days out of the week. Some of them probably hear from me more than they want to. Like right now, Chandler and Tim are probably hearing from me much more than they want to because the pressure of what we're doing is falling on them. I think Pastor Broderick is hearing from me at least twice a week because he's got a ton of pressure looking and overseeing pastoral care. Even Pastor Torres, like our entire team, they're probably sick of hearing and seeing from me as much as they are. But on the other side of that, not only are we meeting for like business stuff, but it's because I like being in the world of the men and women that lead with me. So I like knowing what's going on, how they're feeling, what's in their head, what's in their heart. You want to know why? The reason we have the type of trust and buy-in, how we do, is not because I'm amazing speaker. It's because we've built trust away from a stage and away from what we produce on a Sunday morning that now has enhanced what we do on a Sunday morning. So it's the way we've instilled and built trust.
That's really, really, really good. Let's get one more. Okay, here's a great question from First Mount Olive.
Okay.
I'm a full Baptist church.
Okay.
This. What does pastoring through the L's look like? Assuming that before the where do you even fit in the vision conversation happens. So what does pastoring through the L's look like?
Ooh, okay. So it is really having the grace to take the good and the bad. All right. So a lot of times we love to celebrate our successes. It's going to sound hard. There's got to be a moment where you celebrate your L's as well. L's, for me, they're always lessons. They are loaded with lessons. Anytime you lose, there are pieces of revelation that you got to grab from it so you will learn not to do it again. It can be small stuff or it can be big stuff. L's are not losses to me. They are literally opportunities to learn and to develop yourself more than where you are. All right, you can't look at L's as like the end of the world. You've got to see an L and say, you know what can we learn from what we didn't do right? Who do I need to move out of this spot so that we can do this better? And how can we better manage the future because we were willing to take this lesson and not repeat it again? All right, just because we're winning now, I'll be honest with you, Atlanta is coming off of a season for me that I consider to be losses, like things that we were not as crisp on. We were not as creative as we were at one point. Things were not going like the rest of the world may have been like, this is amazing. For us and in my back office, it's like, guys, we have to do better, or we have to look at this differently. So it's learning from the L's and applying the lessons the right way to the future.
That's really, really good. I feel like this is our last question. We have
okay, cool.
I feel like this is a really good question. What would you recommend? All right, so this is for Ray Garcia.
Okay.
So what do you do and recommend if you are a member of the pastoral staff? If the senior leader is receptive to conversations of change, however, there's no strategy or implementation there to put and plan to execute. So there's no follow through. How do you navigate through that?
And it's waters that Atlanta has had to navigate. We are still navigating many days. So I'm saying it this way just so that I can be very transparent with you, because I don't want you all to think that because we're doing this part of it, we've got all the answers. There are still moments where, like even on staff call today, we were trying to figure out strategies and ways that we communicate even better with our church as a whole, and how we get vital information out in a very streamlined way. So it's one thing to be open. Here's what I would say. Do not, I think our director of HR probably is the most on top of these pieces. She would say, don't leave the table without a deadline set. All right. So, like, if we are planning to make a change, or we need to make a move, or we need to have a follow-up meeting, don't walk away from one table without some type of follow-up interaction already put in place. So, for instance, we're working on pieces for another branch or arm of our ministry over the course of this next week. Before we got off of our staff call today, we had to ensure that, hey, all right, who needs to be in this meeting? What day is going to work best for this meeting? What are we planning to get out of this meeting once we do it? So ensure that the conversation keeps happening so that follow-up can be effective. All right. So good. Great questions. Chad, you don't have to pull me off. I'm reading these questions myself in YouTube, and you know everything in me is ready to pour. I'm telling myself we got another session in less than an hour, but all of me wants to just pour.
The good thing is we have you again Friday night. So
Yeah.
Friday. Yeah. So you guys, if you have any more questions, make sure you hold them till Friday. If you have them for Pastor, Friday night, it's his other session on pressures, pastors, and pandemic. So you guys don't want to miss that. Pastor, we love you. Thank you so much.
I love y'all. Thank you.
You guys, so just a quick couple notes before we log off. That slide, we're going to make sure we try to get that to you guys so you guys can have that with all that information, those notes. So if you signed up for the next class is about with Yolanda Johnson about the stimulus check and how it benefits you and your church, make sure you log on at 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, so literally an hour from right now. Thank y'all for joining. Hope y'all had information, some wisdom, some knowledge poured into you that you needed. And we're just happy and just grateful to be able to pour into you guys things that we know and we have learned. So see y'all at 8 o'clock, and we love y'all.